All right, Julie, thank you. Well, military leaders have about 3.5 years to set up processes to allow women in the armed forces to apply for combat positions. This after last week's new rule by the Obama administration. And joining us now to talk about the implications of women in combat and how the various service branches will comply with the new directive is Jonathan Broder, defense and foreign policy writer with CQ Roll Call. Good morning, and thanks for coming in. So we have this new directive. It has come down now, but what is this process going to be like? I'm trying to get women to apply for these positions. Is that going to be more difficult than maybe people realize, just setting up the process to do it?
Well, one thing you have to remember is that the qualifications for these positions that they're going to be applying for, and that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of new jobs in the Army, or jobs in the Army that only men have had until now, that women will be allowed to apply for. The standards for these jobs is not going to change. So if a combat position requires a person, either a man or a woman, to carry 50 pounds over their head, and run a mile in a certain amount of time, the women will have to qualify for that.
Okay. So how do you think, some people have not been obviously very supportive of this, some in the military, some outside of the military, because they were saying the issues of women not being maybe equally as strong as men. You have covered, the wars in the Mideast. Give me your take, after being over there and covering the wars, what your thought is moving forward, having women more in combat positions than perhaps in the past.
It's going to be very dangerous for women. I mean, women are vulnerable in a way that men are not vulnerable. First of all, as you mentioned, they don't have the upper body strength that a man does. But if a woman were captured, there is the whole issue of her gender that the enemy can take advantage of. So it's a risk. It's a big risk. But women, in fact, have been in combat for the past 10 years. I mean, we've been in war for over a decade in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And there have been more than 20,000 women that have served over there during that period. And they go on patrol with male soldiers as what they call cultural sensitivity groups. So if they have to deal with Afghan or Iraqi women, it was the American female soldiers who would deal with them. But when they would come under fire, the women would have to pick up their arms and fight back. And you've also had like 800 women wounded. You've had more than 150 or 180 were killed. So, in fact, this directive by the Obama administration is just recognizing a certain reality that already exists.
Now, getting back to, you were mentioning, and a lot of people have talked about this, the upper body strength of women, that they're not as strong as men upper body-wise, yet at the same time, women still have to go through the same processes as men, or the training, and they have to pass the same test. So does that kind of make the argument not, make it an argument at all, because if women are still over there and they've already passed the same test as a man, and that they could be stronger than some men?
Exactly. I mean, you're going to have some women. I know women who are like 3-time Ironman competitors.
Right.
And they're going to be stronger than some men. I think that the strongest women will be the ones who become combat soldiers.
What do you think about when it comes to the Navy SEALs and these elite military groups out there? Are we going to see women, you think, in these ranks as well?
Well, that's not clearly established yet. I mean, some of these services, what is going to happen during the next 3.5 years is that some of these services are going to have to decide whether they want to have an exemption from this rule that women can be combat soldiers, and they're going to have to show why. Now, if they do get an exemption, then women won't be able to join the SEALs or Delta or the Green Berets. But if they don't get an exemption, then women will have to qualify for these elite units whose physical standards are even that much higher.
And and this may be part of the question that you just answered, but do you think there are going to be any jobs that are going to be off limits, or can there be? Or is that we wait to see what's going to happen with that?
Well, when you say combat...
or any positions, I guess I should say.
Well, as we said, possibly elite units. But basically, when you say, or when the administration says that combat positions are open to women, we're talking about ground combat, number one, and that means Marines and the Army. And we're talking about infantry, armor, and artillery. So those are the kind of jobs that women would be eligible for.
Why do you think now? Why was now the time for the administration to do this, you think?
Well, as I said before, for the past 10 years, this has been happening anyway, and certain women who serve in the military have been agitating for this. There are several lawsuits out there that the restriction on women, the combat restriction, violates their constitutional rights. I also think that Leon Panetta, who is about to retire, could do this and leave himself quite a lasting legacy.
All right, well, we will see what will happen in the coming years with this. Jonathan Broder with CQ Roll Call. Thanks so much for coming in and talking with us. All right, Tony, over to you.
All right, thank you both very much. 7:40 now on this Monday morning. Still ahead this hour, Ben Affleck's last laugh. Argo's awards show streak continues despite that snub from Hollywood's main event. We'll look back at last night's Screen Actors Guild Awards. But first, it's Mentoring Monday. Holly will join us live next with what it's all about and how you can get involved. 7:40. We'll be right back.